Hey, it's James from Marketing for Restaurants, and welcome to episode 84 of Secret Sauce, the restaurant marketing podcast. How to complete a restaurant business plan.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is going to be a really exciting episode, I think. I think this is something that I know a lot of restaurant owners are very interested in trying to get information in. Now, ideally, I'm going to be talking to someone 12 months before they start their restaurant. 12 months before you open the restaurant, 12 months before you cook your first meal, 12 months before you serve your first customer. This is when you want to start thinking about your business plan. Now, sadly, I know that 99% of people are going to be going, holy crap, this isn't working. We need to start turning it around. We need to start thinking about putting a business plan in place. Sad but true. So this is aimed for someone who's probably running a restaurant right now. And as such, I would say there's a couple of guidelines. So what I'm doing is I've got a business.gov.au business plan template, which I'll put up on the website. It's a pretty good template. It's got a lot of stuff in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and break down all of the areas that you need to be thinking about as we go through them. What I would say, though, is that it's not important to fill out the entire document. So a lot of times the business plan is used to go and source funding. So you're going to go to the bank and say, I'm going to start a restaurant, to which they'll say, good luck with that, because we're not going to help you because restaurants always fail. But you will try and get some sort of funding from it, but whether it's a credit card with a decent limit or, look, you may be using your home savings. So you're either going to be using your savings or you're going to be using a loan against your family house, which is why I think it is so important that we get this right. If you're putting the family house on the line, which so many small business owners do, then you really got to get it right. You've got to make sure that you've done all of your research and you're setting yourself up for success. I don't want this to be the document. You can use this document to go to the bank with. I don't want it to be that document. I want this to be a living document that you are going to use to plan and revise and update as you get more and more information. Now, one of the benefits, of course, of doing the business plan after you've started is that you've got a much better idea before you've started. And because a lot of the information that you're going to be putting in here, well, it's pretty hard to come by. Particularly if you've never run a restaurant before. That can be a big problem because you don't know, well, for starters, you don't know what you don't know, but you don't know how many people you're going to get in on each of the nights that you're open. You're not going to know the mix of meals versus drinks, all of those sort of things. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't be doing that. And one of the things that I would do is suggest is to reach out to restaurant owners. Now, you might not want to reach out to restaurant owners in your local area where you're planning on opening the restaurant because of the fact that they will often think that they'll view you as competition. But you may be able to reach out to local restaurant organisations or people you know who run restaurants but aren't going to be in that local area. Or you could talk to your accountant, maybe, just maybe they'll have some information on the kind of numbers that you're going to be expecting to see. You may potentially be able to reach out to some of your suppliers. I would consult widely for the information that you need to be able to do this because the more accurate the information is that you put in, the better off you're going to be with your business plan. Now, what you want to do is you want to cherry pick the most important things and do them first. If you're already running, then you probably want to update your spreadsheets and your P&L, if that's the big thing that you're struggling with. I see far too many people look at the business plan as something that needs to be done, and they say, right, I'm going to spend 12 hours and I'm going to smash out a business plan. This is for you to be profitable and to make money, okay? So don't view this as something that you've got to smash out in one day. I also think that it's really important because the reason why I think business planning is so important is that as you go through, you're going to think, I never really thought of that. And That's not something that you're going to spend 10 minutes coming up with a solution for. It's not something that you're going to spend 5 minutes Googling and coming up with the answer for. It might be something that you want to take away and churn over in your mind for a week, a month, 6 months, to come up with the best possible answer. I always say, running a restaurant, it's a full contact sport. The strength of your business plan, the two things, the strength of your business plan and the execution of your business plan is fundamental to your success. Everyone has a business plan. Some, it's just really woolly. There's not a lot of detail in it, and it's all in their noggin. If you're that person, it's not something that you can pull out on a 3-monthly basis and review it and say, you know what, I got that bit completely wrong. How about I redo this bit and come up with something that's a little bit better? Or I really didn't put enough detail in this part of the business plan. Even if you're up and running, one of the great advantages is that you can put your actual figures in there, which is the big difference between actual versus the figures that you think that you're going to get. You might find, though, that over time, those figures fluctuate. And the biggest reason for that is winter versus summer numbers. That can make a massive difference. But we've also spoken to restaurants who they were the first one in an area, and so it was really easy for them, and then all of a sudden some competition started up, and now they've started to struggle. What are the current figures that you've got, and how are they changed? The last bit, you want to review this continually. By continually, I mean, probably every 3 months. Pick out the bit that in your business plan that is the least strong and go back to it. And do that repeatedly. And I think that this is a really, really good way of making sure that your business plan is as strong as it possibly is. Bearing in mind that, as I said before, it's a living document. It's not something that you want to fill in and then file away and never review. You should be reviewing it. Not only should you be reviewing it, you should be updating it as well. All right, so as we go through the template, there's a front page on it that's all nice with a whole heap of the index, which is, really quite massive. Now, this is an Australian document, so of course you've got to localize it for whether it's in Argentina, Taiwan, United States, UK, wherever it is that you're listening to the podcast and wherever it is that you're opening up your glorious restaurant. So there's a few things in there. If you're in Australia, hopefully you'll know what your ABN and ACN is. Obviously, they're different throughout the world. The thing that is really interesting about this is it talks about the business location. We'll talk about location in a little bit of time because this is a fundamental thing. The business location, now what they're expecting you to put in is the address. Talk to someone like Robbie Doyle from Buy, Grow, Sell a Business. Now he will tell you that all locations aren't the same. So we'll go on to that. Date established, when is it that you're actually going to start, or when was it that you did start? And the next one here is business owners. And this is sort of and it's just expecting you to put down, well, it's Bob and Frank, and it's a business partnership. This is a massive decision that you want to take. I have seen people who start business partnerships on a whim. Oh, you know what? There's this guy I met down the pub. He's really good and I'm going to go into business with him. That's probably not a good start for a relationship because I have seen so many times good restaurants, great restaurants, highly profitable restaurants fall apart because the business owners have fallen apart. I think that there's a big strength and the big weakness in it. Firstly, the big strength is that you've got two people who are going to take ownership of the business. And ownership is so important. It's one of the 4 key values in marketing for restaurants. All of our team, ownership is a really big thing. We want people to act like owners. And you would think that if someone's got a 50% share or 4 people have got 25% shares, then they're going to be doing that thing that an owner does. They're going to be acting like the owner. They're going to be doing the things that have the best intentions for the business. Not for themselves, but for the business at heart. Now, the downside of that is that that's not always the way. So, and I've seen it, someone who's the accountant, someone who's the marketer, someone who's the chef, and someone who's the front of house guy. And they're the 4 people who are the owners of a restaurant. That's fantastic. So what about when the chef's working 70 hours a week in the kitchen and the front of house guy or the marketing guy is working 10 hours? Now, is that fair? And the marketing guy says, well, look at the success, look at the number of people who are coming in. And then the chef says, yeah, but that's because my food's epic. Now, already you've got this problem about how the business is split up, because realistically the marketing guy should be working 70 hours a week. Shouldn't he? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. But this is one of those things where either you just let it slide, and over time, it's just like, this guy's only working 1 day a week. I'm working 7 days a week. It's just not fair, and there's no solution to it. And it builds bitterness and rivalry within the partnership. So it's like a marriage, except more important. I don't know. I'm being slightly flippant. But picking your business owner is incredibly important. It's not something that you should do lightly. If you speak to a lawyer, when you speak to a lawyer, they're going to say, always think about what could go wrong with it. And I think that is really good advice. So let's decide that we don't want to be partners. What happens then? How does the partnership get dissolved? And, one of the issues then is like, well, I think that the business is worth $1 million, so you need to pay me $500,000. And then the other partner says, well, I think it's worth $100,000 and I think I should pay you $50,000. How are you going to value the business? Now, here's something that you may not have thought about. I want to buy out your share of the business, so I'm going to run it down until it's worth nothing. And then you'll give me your share of the business. Well, you might pay 50% of nothing. I might pay $10,000, $20,000. And then I'm going to reverse everything that I've done to run this business into the ground. I'm going to turn it around because I know deep down that this is $1 million business. Now, you're saying, oh my God, who would actually do that? I've seen it happen. I have seen it happen. We've had customers who this has happened to. So you want to think about all of these sort of things. Now, I don't want to get too negative on you, but I just want to open your eyes just a little bit. This is the kind of thing. We're doing the business plan here, people, so you need to be planning for this kind of stuff, because it does get very, very untidy when it happens. We then talk about the products and services. This is all of the, the summary type stuff. So I'm going to skip through it and sort of go through what it is that you want to be looking at as we get through them in. So we'll get straight into the actual business. It talks you, we've got to work out what licenses and permits. And usually there's a business bureau or someone who will be able to tell you, well, you need this, 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 and this. You should definitely touch base with the council. You want to touch base with the council because, A, you want to make sure that you get it right. And I've seen so many times that the local planning authority has held up a business that you're paying the lease on, and sometimes that's for 12 months. And this is where we'll talk about the financing at some point. But if you don't tick off on how the timeline to going live, if you don't get that bit right, then you can spend way more than you ever plan on getting it right. So you want to engage with all of the stakeholders. Council. Now, so one of the things I wanted to mention with that is they may have funding for new businesses. Our local council, the Frankston Council, they have a series of awards each year. And now one of those awards was, they had a grant to try and grow your export business. And we won that grant a couple of years ago. Now, back then, we had customers in New Zealand. We've now got customers in 13 countries, which, is pretty exciting. And the council always love hearing that story because, they put some money into grow an export business and we've been able to grow our exports. So it's not just about from a compliance point of view that you want to be engaging with the range of governments that you're going to have to deal with. It's also from what is it that they can do to help you. You've got to remember, small business is the engine room of the economy. And as particularly that some of the more, future thinking organisations are starting to really worry about where the jobs are going to be in 5 or 10 years' time. I've got to tell you, there's going to be a massive focus on hospitality because that's something that you can't offshore. It's something that you can't outsource. It's something the AI bots that are coming, well, they're not really going to be able to do much around that space. You're still going to have to cook food and serve that food. So you definitely want to be looking at who it is that's out there that you can start to deal with. In the registration details, they also talk about domain names. My God, this is important. This is really important. So you want to start thinking about what your domain name would be. And so you're probably going to think about this before the business name, because you don't want to say this is the business name and then realize that you can't get the domain for it, because that just creates confusion. The process where you're going to choose the business name and the domain name, that's one and the same. You also need to look at how you're going to protect that. So when it comes to the business name, everyone wants to have something, like if it's a Chinese restaurant, Lucky Dragon restaurant. From a marketing point of view, that's really quite tough. When you look at the domain name, the smart guys are unfortunately the aggregators who do brand jacking. So they will take Lucky Dragon restaurant, and you might register luckydragon.com or .com.au, whatever your top level domain is. They'll register Lucky Dragon and then suburb name. And that suburb name is because people are going to be looking for a restaurant in that suburb. So what is it that people are going to be searching for? And this is why the choice of domain name and business name is so important. Now, I'll tell you a little story about just how important your domain name is. So when we first started marketing for restaurants, we wanted to test some of the technology that we were building. So we created a mock business, which was called Rooster Burgers, and the domain for Rooster Burgers was melbournesbestburgers.com.au. And it's really quite an awful website, but it was a technology demonstrator for us. We were looking at some things from Google Analytics, and we were looking at some things from Facebook and a whole range of things that we wanted to test out. Never intended to actually do anything. Now, the scary thing was that we had to dumb down the website because we started getting orders. And I remember the first time the phone rang and someone said, is this Rooster Burgers? And was like, oh, no, it isn't. And she said, oh, do you know, is it the wrong number? And I said, no, it's actually it's just a demonstrator website. It's not actually a real restaurant. And she goes, you're kidding me. I just spent an hour taking orders for everyone. And she had an order for 20 burgers. Now, this is because she had searched for Melbourne's Best Burgers and found it. Now, Google quite rightly has significantly decreased the rankings of that because it's not a real restaurant. And Google's probably got that flagged as, not a real restaurant. If ours was a real burger restaurant and we were taking burgers and people were leaving reviews on Google and all of those sort of things, then we would be getting a lot more traffic from it because quite rightly, when people go looking for Melbourne's Best Burgers, we are known as Melbourne's Best Burgers. That was part of the keyword strategy that we were running with. So you really want to think about the name of your business as well as the domain name. And I'm not saying that you don't want to be having, Melbourne's Best Burgers, but you may want to put a suburb name in the name of it, and we're seeing more and more people are doing that. If you come up with a made-up name, and so an example like that, when I Googled Melbourne's Best Burgers, 8-Bit came up. Now, those guys do a great burger. They've had to go and create a brand around that. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's one of those things that you need to think about. So you would really want to think a little bit more about the business name that you're going to have and the domain names that you're going to register. Now, business premises. So the first one is the business location, and then it talks about buying and leasing. So the business premise, where is it? And I think this is a fundamental question that you want to be thinking about. You need to think about the location because it is going to fundamentally affect the profitability of your business. So the first thing is, how much walk-by traffic is it? Now, if there's a lot of walk-by traffic, then you're probably going to pay more for the lease. Are you going to create a destination restaurant? Yes or no? What is the parking like there? How many seats can you put in the restaurant? Are you going to be able to have seats out on the pavement? There's a lot of questions what's public transport like? Are you able to get a taxi nearby? For those who are still taking a taxi, Uber makes it a significantly easier. What other businesses are there in the area? That dictates what your competition's going to be like, but it also dictates what the joint marketing ventures are that you can do. Now, the next part of that is whether you're going to buy or lease the property. And I'll include in the show notes links to the 3 podcasts that we did with Robbie Doyle because he breaks down this to a really, really good he goes through a lot of the questions about it. And I think, obviously, the easy thing to do is to buy. And I've spoken to multiple business owners, multiple restaurant owners, who have been able to buy their own property. Now, the cool thing about that is that they have got multiple sources of wealth creation. They put a restaurant in, they run a restaurant that is going okay, But in 10, 20 years, they may have a restaurant which they may or may not be able to sell, but they've got a property that they may have paid off the loan that they took out to buy it, and they might have tripled their money. So their superannuation has effectively been the premise that they have bought all those years ago. Now, this can be a huge difference in the wealth generation process for your restaurant. You may not be able to sell it, when you want to get out, when you're ready to retire. But if you've bought the property, then you can sell the property. Hopefully there's been a significant windfall there. That can make it really cool. Now, there's a downside to that. So that is that I'm not giving any advice on property investment or anything like that, but one of the issues that you can have is that if you are your own tenant, then you've got a property and the business isn't going well. If the restaurant's struggling, then of course you've got a investment property that you need to make a loan on, and unfortunately you've got a struggling tenant. So you've now got twice the problem. If you're struggling with the lease, then you might be able to walk away from the lease, or you don't have that option if you buy the property and you need to make interest repayments. So that's something that you might want to think about. Next thing that you want to go through is your org chart. And I think, really, all you really want to do with this is you want to start thinking about who is it that's going to be working in the business, how many full-time equivalents are there going to be, how many people are you going to be putting in. We've talked about ownership, something that you really, really need to think about. And I think that that's fundamental. What's the experience that everyone's got in the business? So partially management, ownership, and key titles. So what's their experience in running a restaurant? What are their qualifications? When you start thinking about your key personnel, so that may be the restaurant manager. So it may not necessarily be the owner. You might have someone who's going to be the restaurant manager. Now, obviously, how long are they going to stay with you? What are the skills that you require from that person? How are you going to retain them? I think this is a really big question. Is it going to be profit share? Are you just going to pay them a large sum of money? One of the things to think about is where's your restaurant situated? So if you think about someone like Anna Ross, she struggles to get people to be able to, who want to work at the restaurant, because the restaurant is really off the beaten track. Now, if there are locals who you can employ, then they're very unlikely to leave town because there may not be too many jobs around there. If you're in a capital city, then there might be the talent pool might be a lot deeper, but people may turn around. So you need to sort of trade off those sort of things and at least think about them and work out how you can maximize those strengths and minimize those weaknesses for your business. And then what staff are you going to require? Front of house, back of house? What are some of the other roles that need to be done and who are going to do those roles? Things like marketing, bookkeeping, all of those little ancillary roles that need to be done by someone. Who is it that's going to do them? Now, while we're looking at staff, I think it's a really good time to have a think about recruiting options. Where are you going to find these people? Are you going to hire them from a job board? Are you going to use... Then there's plenty of job boards out there. Is that the best way of doing it? Can you recruit from local training institutions? Can you get people who, for entry-level positions, can you get them straight out of school? Do you want to liaise with the local schools that are teaching chefs or front-of-house skills? Do you want to advertise on Facebook? We use Facebook predominantly for advertising in a lot of our roles because it enables us to find the people that we want before they go to a job board. Job boards tend to be full of people who are either have just lost their job or are about to lose their job. And that's not really a talent pool that you want to be swimming in, I don't think. You want to be looking for people who are looking to trade up, and you want to be the first business that they think about. So that's one thing to think about. Where are you going to recruit these people? And don't underestimate the amount of time that it's going to take to do that. And this is a very, very tricky question because you need to think about when are they going to start and when is the restaurant going to start? So how long are you going to have them before the restaurant opens? And how are you going to afford that? That needs to be factored into your financials, is that you might have people there for 1 week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks, however long it is. You're going to be paying them a wage and you're not going to have any money coming in. Now, next thing to start thinking about is the training program. So how are things going to get done, and how are you going to train people to do the things that you want done the way that you want them done? Now, some of this is going to be, generic skills. So how do you want And people will come to you with a set level of skills, whether it's a certificate or some sort of qualification that says that they can do the job that they do. But, when you're making that burger, how do you want that burger to look? How big is the patty going to be? What are the condiments that go on it? What should it look like? How many fries are going to go in with that? All of those sort of things. How do you train people up to do that? Now, part of it's obviously the policies and procedures. The other part of it is you need someone to be training people to be able to do that. You're training, and then on top of that, you want a quality assurance type program. So how are you going to do all of those sort of things? Then you've got your succession planning. So when someone comes in as a line cook, how do they make their way up through the business to be the head executive chef? Now, that might be a little bit much for your restaurant, but how are people going to skill people up? This is a really, really important part of the business, because if you can take someone in who is a line cook, and then in 3 years' time, they're actually able to manage the entire kitchen, then guess what? You don't need to manage the kitchen. If they can do the job as good as you can, if not better, or at least to 80%, that depends on how you want to run the business, then once you've done that, then you're out of the kitchen. Same for front of house. Same for the whole restaurant. Who's going to be the restaurant manager? Who's going to deal with every problem that comes up, whether it's front of house or back of house? Now, that is probably going to be you at the start. But how do you train someone to be able to do that? And that's a fundamental thing, because once you've done that, then you've broken the linkage between the restaurant being able to operate and you being there. And that is really cool, because then you can start working on the restaurant, not in the restaurant. And then once you increase the profitability of it, then you don't need to be there. You can take a holiday. And I know there will be a lot of people listening to this podcast, because we talk to a lot of people a lot of the time about this. There'll be a lot of people who are really keen on that. And it comes back to the fact that, the policies and procedures haven't been written and there's no training program in there. It doesn't need to be a strict training program that's government accredited. It might be a mentoring program for people to take that next role up there. Same with skill retention strategy. So they're talking about the documentation. That's really about your policies and procedures. And I would look at using something like Confluence. If you've got less than 10 people in the company, then it's free. Or I think it's $50 to buy outright. That's a pretty cool investment to be able to have a document that, people can look up and say, well, how do I cook a burger? Oh, this is what it's meant to look like. And these are all of the ingredients that go into it. Boom. That's pretty cool. So we've covered off on some of the people type things that you're going to put into your business plan. What we'll do in the next episode, we're going to come and we'll talk about products and services. There's lots to talk about in that. So stay tuned for the next episode. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.